I have a question. I said, once you're an employee, then you have civil, if you're not management, then you have civil service protection. What does that civil service protection provide an employee?
I think you've done some research in that area, and you've looked up the county civil service system and who is the civil service. I don't know, maybe you haven't.
Just a bit, not enough to.
Yeah, so the little bit of the history here. Before the collective bargaining statutes were put in place in the state of Washington, and quite frankly in almost throughout the Union, civil servants saw that the military had some kind of third party to look at decisions that were made in terms of discipline, punishment, or even determining a promotion or a rank. And that's the Code of Military Justice. It's all codified. And so civil servants, state by state, said, you know, and this is before the collective bargaining laws, we should have that protection. And so they bargained into the state laws a civil service system, which was then start out with the state, and then it was disseminated through legislation to the counties and the cities. And it was required for certain groups to have this type of civil service protection. About 6 or 7 years ago, if you look back at it, you'll find that almost all the state employees were under a state civil service system. And collective bargaining was kind of ancillary to it. But if a state employee was disciplined, their way for recourse was through this civil service system. Then a large union interest came in and said, let's change that legislation, and then we will be able to negotiate over wages and not have it determined by the legislature. And if there's a disciplinary matter, it won't go to this civil service commission. It will then be determined under the grievance provisions of a collective bargaining agreement. And ultimately, if you've got a good provision, it ends up with an independent arbitrator handling those disciplinary matters. And the state went through it. They scrapped their whole civil service system and adopted this collective bargaining system. Then all of the state employees went and negotiated their contracts, and they all negotiated their wage rates. And little did it, I'm assuming the unions knew this, but when the contracts went back to the governor had the authority to say no. And so a lot of that legislation was kind of it was an attempt to replace the civil service system, but it really didn't do a very good job replacing it. In your case, the county has this civil service system that was established prior to collective bargaining. And then the collective bargaining statutes came online, and many of the guilds, associations, and unions recognized that they have more power under the collective bargaining agreement and greater protection for the employees by utilizing a grievance and arbitrator disciplinary system subject to just cause. You will sometimes see, like for example, in the deputy sheriff's office, where an individual deputy gets disciplined or terminated, and the guild says, I'm not going to represent you. In which case, the only recourse that individual has is to civil service. And so, civil service still has meaning, but as a general rule, if an employee has a choice between a grievance arbitration challenge to a discipline and a civil service challenge to a discipline, the grievance arbitration way is often the way to go. It's the better, you're going to end up with a better result.